Hello and welcome to Mondays live at 3 o'clock. And thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited about our topic today. We're going to be talking about the number one thing that's keeping you stuck in your trauma. And that's permission. And we're going to talk about why the lack of permission is keeping you stuck. My name is Natalie, and I run True Alignment Academy. And thank you so much for showing up for today and showing up for yourself. So, we're going to talk about some of the biggest things that we don't allow in our lives that's holding us back. Hi, Sabrina, welcome. I would love to answer any questions that you have. So as you're popping on here, let me know where you're from. And if you have any questions, I'll answer them throughout this live. And I'll also come back and answer questions. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Vicki. So nice to see y'all here today. So we're talking about giving ourselves permission. And hi, Louise. I want to talk to y'all about my story of permission and what got me on this journey to living my life to the fullest potential and really living my best life, taking this life and creating it to be my own instead of what everyone else says that it should be. And what does that look like for me? And I will tell you that I didn't know what giving myself permission even meant for the longest time. Even the profession that I got into, nursing, I got into it because that was what was expected of me, right? And knowing what I wanted, giving myself permission to even ask myself what I wanted or to know myself was something that I was never familiar with in my life. So I got into nursing right out of high school, and I hit the books, and I was an RN by the time I was 20. And from then I continued working in that profession to make everyone else happy. I never gave myself permission to question what I really wanted. Don't get me wrong. I love helping people. That was what I wanted to do from the very beginning. But I never gave myself permission to explore what that actually needed to look like. And so today we're going to talk about how is it that we give ourselves permission. I can tell you that my entire life I was trying to prove my worth by what everyone else expected of me. So I tried to prove my worth by being the best employee, the best nurse that there was. When there was a conference or continuing education or anything out there, I was there because I needed to feel valued, because I wasn't enough. And I continued like that, working. When they needed a shift, I picked up every single shift that there was and ended up making my career my life. I was a nurse, if you were to ask me, and that was the only thing I could tell you about myself. So I dove head into my career, and any friends that came up in my life, they weren't there long because my dedication completely was to my career. And if you've watched the past couple of lives, you know that I acted out of belief systems, because that's what we do. We take our belief systems and prove them true. And so I continue to create chaos and isolation in my life over and over and over, pushing away the very people that I so desired, because of my core need is love and to feel valued. And we can never, ever feel any of that until we can give ourselves that. And that's what's so important. So I went on this journey, and I continued to numb because emotions weren't safe for me. Definitely as a healer in the healthcare profession, They were never safe to feel. And so all the trauma from my childhood collected, and I just continued in the chaos and continued shoving down all the emotions from the events that ensued after. The events that happened in my life, because I continued to prove those belief systems true, right? I that I deserve to be punished, that people aren't safe. So I sabotaged every relationship that I had over and over and over again. And this whole time that I'm numbing with alcohol and anything I could get my hands on, right? Running through these relationships with friends and men and destroying my relationships with my parents. All of this chaos, the only thing I could ask was, what's wrong with me? And that was like the theme of my life. What is wrong with me? Every time that, because my gestalts were full, my emotions would explode and I would bleed out on everyone around me. And I would come back to what's wrong with me. And see, this was the thing, is that there was nothing wrong with me. I just didn't know how to use this, right? I wasn't broken. I just didn't know how to use this and to heal and to process my emotions. But I'll tell you that question, what is wrong with me? The one thing that I did do was I gave myself permission to accept any help that came along. If anyone had prescription or a therapist or a method to help me figure out why I continued the patterns in my life and I continued the chaos and pushing people away and not feeling my own core needs and feeling so miserable in my own skin, I took it. Whatever was there to offer. I gave myself permission to take it. Therapy, EMDR, hypnotherapy, NLP, coaching programs, you name it, I took it. And for the moment, it worked, right? Or it worked a little while. I would get back on track. I would step away from the chaos for just a little while. And see, it was never my lack of willingness to heal. The problem was that it was a lack of the effectiveness of the tools. The tools that I found helped me with my behavior and the way that trauma showed up in my life. But again, like a Tylenol for a fever, it never got to the root. I was fixing what was showing up in my life without ever getting to the root of the trauma. So it continued to come back over and over and over. And fixing the root cause of trauma is what we really have to do. And that starts with permission. That starts with permission, giving yourself permission to do that. So we're going to talk about where people won't give themselves permission. In what areas? What does this mean, right? So first, I definitely can relate to this. My whole life patterns out from the permission, giving myself permission to say no. So most of you in this group have a desire to help people, right? That's why we got into the professions or the work or the business that we're doing, is we want to help other people. We don't ever want to see anyone else with the pain that we had to take on. And we just want to make sure that we help as many people as we can while we're on this earth. We have that in our hearts, to our core. So let's say that you are taking care of the kids and you're trying to cook dinner and your husband just got home from work and you have a million things on your to-do list, and a friend picks up the phone and they say, hey, I really need you to come over and do this for me, or I really need you to stop and send me this. What do? Stop everything that you're doing, right? And you go and you tend to that friend or sibling or whoever's on the other side of that call. You stop everything that you're doing and you go and do that because you never gave yourself permission to say no. And subconsciously, we're meeting the need. Someone calls me up and they're like, hey, I need, and I'm like, oh, I can help them. And we need to feel validated. And so in helping them, we we feel validated and we say yes, and then it creates even more chaos on the other end. And that pattern continues and continues and continues because we never give ourselves permission to say no. And so then our to-do list stacks up even more because we never got half of it done, right? And most importantly, we run out of time. And since we're always last on the list, we never get to that self-care ever. And what happens when we don't do that? We're tired. We're not resourced. We're coming from the end of the rope, right? We're coming from a place of not having anything left to give. Our gestalts are full. And the cycle continues to go downward over and over and over because we have never given ourselves permission to say no, permission to put ourselves first. We are operating out of lack instead of operating out of overflow, right? And the problem is we've never figured out what's been programmed in our subconscious mind that's making us act this way anyways. We've been treating the symptoms over and over again, right? And then we don't understand why we continue to get into these patterns. And our beliefs are what created our core need. And so we continue to try to fill our core needs in an unhealthy way, right? Well, if I tell them no, then they're going to leave me. They're not going to accept me anymore. They're going to abandon me, right? And so we say yes to everyone to keep them in our lives because we want to feel valued because we can't value ourselves. Codependency, right? My entire life, being the rescuer. I will tell you that I had a suitcase packed for my entire, since I left my father's house, I had a suitcase packed at the door, ready for whoever called me. I would drop everything that I was doing because I was needed. I was valued. They needed me. And it filled that core need. And so I continue to put myself last. Yes, Kathleen, exactly. And we get sick, right? Permission to stop. Permission to stop. That's another really huge one. You know, I feel like busyness is like an epidemic for us. It's a way of life. How are you? I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm busy. And what it does is it gives us that excuse to say, I'm busy. I don't have time to deal with what's going on here or anything else in our life and in my life. And so I put that label on, I'm busy, and it justifies me not having to deal with any of the emotions. So I'm able to push them down. And I'm busy creates a protective barrier because remember, one of my biggest core beliefs was people aren't safe. Even though my biggest core need is connection, one of my biggest ones is connection. People aren't safe. So if I'm busy, I don't have to worry about making those connections. Right? And this is why continuing to pick up shifts at work over and over and over again, that was where my comfort zone was. I knew I could get onto autopilot as soon as I got to work and clocked in, and I didn't have to deal with any of this, and I didn't have to deal with anyone else's stuff. I could be in my zone, hustling to be good enough at work, hustling to be loved, because that's where I knew that I can excel at. But what happens when everything stops? Everything that you push down finally comes back up. It bubbles to the surface. It doesn't go away. And your family and your loved ones that you've pushed to the side from your busyness, we're so scared of abandonment, but yet we push so many people away. It all comes from the subconscious mind and the patterns that we continue to play out in our lives. Right? And I'll tell you that permission to rest was one that I still struggle with that. I still struggle with that. But what's different is now I love myself enough to be able to give myself that. And that's the game changer. When you love yourself enough to put yourself first, that's the game changer. Because what happens is our body, we either take the time at the Cairo. Yes, Jill, you are showing up for yourself and loving on yourself so that you can operate from a place of overflow, right? Because if we don't stop and rest, what happens is our body will make us stop and rest. You either choose, it's your choice. You can choose to stop and rest and put yourself first, or your body will force you down. And most of the time, you're down for a couple of weeks. I'll never forget in nursing school, it was clockwork, right? And including after, because I continued my pattern of busyness and chaos after nursing school, picking up 6, 7, 12s a week. The holidays hit, or a weekend, I had 4 days off. I was sick every single time. Every single time, because I never gave myself permission to stop and rest. Either you choose or your body will choose for you. Every single time. Permission to be yourself. First of all, you have to know who you are. And I can tell you that it took me a long time to get brave enough to see who I was. To see who I was. To give myself permission to explore who Natalie is outside of the badge, outside of the credentials, outside of what everyone expected me to be, outside of who my parents wanted me to be. Who am I at my core? Giving yourself permission to be yourself, it comes with self-love and self-trust. And I'll tell you, when all these pieces of yourself are still in pain from the trauma, it's so difficult to love and trust yourself whenever you are still have so much pain inside of you. Before I got my healing, I didn't trust myself with any decision. None. And I'll tell you, if I did give myself just the littlest bit of trust to make a decision, as soon as I made the decision, I would critique it and I would go into a shame spiral. Was that the right decision? I don't know. Who's going to be hurt by that decision? How could I make that decision? And then the shame would just eat me up on the inside. There was no self-trust. I truly was looking to anyone around me to give me a direction, right? I would make a decision, the shame would come, and they would say, what's wrong with me? The theme of my life, what's wrong with me? What happened after my healing was I was able to get to know every piece of myself and to love myself enough to say that everything in my past, I was doing the best I could with what I knew. And being able to love myself and forgive myself. And I'll tell you, the shame is no longer there. It has lifted. Giving myself permission to know who I am and stand in my truth, regardless of anyone else's opinion, regardless of what anyone else says. It's so powerful. And that is possible for you too. It is possible for each and every one of you. And so that leads me to permission to say yes. again, permission to say yes, permission to change. You know, our comfort zone is a place which I can tell you, I was very much, before I found my healing, in a comfort zone of my own mess. And it's miserable and it's chaotic and it's insane. At that point, so many times in my life, I tried to commit suicide. Absolutely miserable. I didn't really care if I lived or died. And finally, after all the attempts were unsuccessful, I thought, well, maybe I'm just going to live the rest of my life this miserable. Maybe this is my sentence. I deserve to be punished, right? That was in my subconscious mind since I was 5 years old. As miserable and chaotic as it was, though, I knew what was coming. And so when I came to this healing, I was like, but what would healing look like, right? What would happen if I got this healing? Who would I be? I'm telling you that who you are on the other side is still who you are right now. The difference is you'll be able to give yourself permission to say, what do I deserve? What do I want? You'll be able to stand in your own truth. You'll be able to get rid of all of the programming that has influenced your entire life and stand in your own decisions with all of the self-trust and all of the self-love. You will come from a place with the tools provided in my program, lifelong tools. So you only need to rely on yourself. Between the tools, you and God, you will be able to take care of your own finances, your own well-being, and most importantly, your own mental health through regulating your emotions and knowing deep down in your soul that no matter what happens in your life, no matter what comes at you, that you will have the tools to be able to handle it, creating that solid foundation, knowing that nothing is impossible. That's what healing looks like. That's what you look like on the other side of your trauma. That's what it looks like. That's where true freedom lies. Giving yourself permission for change. That's what it takes. And not everyone's ready for that, and that's okay. Change can be very challenging with the subconscious mind. And so know that your subconscious mind is always here for you. It is always trying to keep you safe. Always. And so knowing that you don't have the emotional availability to start the healing process with your trauma, that it's not safe to do so, that's okay. That's why I'm going to show up every single week and give you tools and tips in order to help you get the emotional availability so that what needs to be healed can rise to the surface. And when you create that emotional availability, when you're ready, I will be here for you to walk with you hand in hand through this journey so that on the other side of your healing, you can stand in your power and you can be who God meant for you to be in all of your gifts and talents on the other side. I promise you, if you show up and do the work in my program, that lifelong you will have tools so that you don't have to depend on anyone else for your own well-being, for your own mental health. You will be able to stand on your own 2 feet in all of the self-love and all of the self-trust, and life can hand you anything and you will be able to take it on. Incredible. It's incredible. My invitation to you this week is to start looking at where these things are showing up for you, and to start giving yourself permission in the small things. Listen to your body. If you need to lay down and take a nap, give yourself permission to do so. If someone's inviting you to go out and mingle with friends or whatever that looks like, give yourself permission to make it your choice. Give yourself permission to say yes. Give yourself permission to say no. Start trusting yourself in the small things. Start building that trust. If you feel like you're ready right now to start your healing and be on the other side of the trauma so that you can make room for joy and peace and happiness, and no longer depend on anyone else for love and to be valued, but you know that you have it right here. You don't need anyone else for that. If you're ready for that, reach out to me and let's start that journey. I will be with you the entire way. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I will see you next week, Monday at 3 p.m. Thanks, guys.